I'm very excited. All right.
I'm excited.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is a lot. He's a lot of things, but the first thing, business owner, right? Real estate investor and realtor, jiu-jitsu practitioner, purple belt, right? Former Marine with 2 active tours in Afghanistan, and just when you thought there couldn't be more, there is. He's a kind-hearted, God-fearing, thought-provoking, community-giving individual who looks like he could be Jason Momoa's own flesh and blood. Jonathan Garvey, everyone.
Thank you. What a great introduction.
Yeah, I was like, how am I gonna do this? I'm like, there's so many layers. I'll just yeah. But the first thing was like, this dude looks like he could be Jason Momoa's. Like,
that's the first time I've ever heard that.
Really?
No, not really.
Well, I'm glad if you guys didn't know.
Yeah.
But thank you for being here, man. I'm glad that we have the chance to talk, because the first layer of like your name, like hearing your name, was from Alejandro Gomez. Yeah. He wore that awesome bomber jacket, and I was like, where'd you get that? And he's like, oh, Panchos blanket. They have, and he told me about, how it's handmade, woven, and it's through Mexico, and all these things, and I'm like, yeah, I need to talk to him, like, right now. Yeah. And then the second thing was, you had posted a video right before it got really cold, and you gave out, was it a Baja jacket?
Yep, it was a Baja sweater.
Mm-hmm. And you were giving it out. Excuse me. And it was just like, that's all I needed. Like, if that was all that I knew about you, I'm like, great. What a kind, generous human being. Got to talk to him.
Nice.
And so it was just...
It's so funny how you can't really... We want to be hesitant to post anything that we ever do.
Right.
Because you're like, oh, I don't want to flex. Everything's a flex, you know? And you want to avoid that naturally. A lot of people do. I do. But honestly, you need to just show people sometimes what you do for them to get interest. Correct. To talk about it, to make a sell, or even to just inspire somebody. Those are important things to do.
Yeah, and it's really tough to find like a culture where it isn't about look at me, look at what I did, look at this, and it did not come off like that. Good. So it genuinely came off as like, this is a good person doing good things. It's not like I was talking with Mike. It's not like you went to your therapist and you're like, just FYI, it's Monday, so, and then share your thing you went to therapy for. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, there's no show. It's all a real, legitimate business, and I'm just glad to have you here, man.
Thanks, man. It was a little awkward doing the that video that you're talking about, because I was driving not expecting to do it. I had some sweaters beside me, and then I see this guy, one of the homeless guys with their signs, and I'm like, oh snap. I grabbed my phone, like, and it felt, I mean, it was 100% authentic, but I had to make myself do it, in the sense of I had to make myself bust out the phone instead of just being like, just give it to him. Who gives a crap if anyone ever sees this? People care that they see it. People care that we actually do what we say we do too, because a big part of our business model is how much we give back to communities in Mexico. Right. And we just started to do that here in Kansas City. And you could say that, but then they're like, when did you guys give sweaters away? When did you guys actually do what you said you did? And so it's good to have these videos and things that show people this is what we're actually about.
Right. And there's a perfect segue, by the way. But so Gomi told me about a story about these are handmade things in Mexico. Like the pocket, like all of this?
Yeah. That pocket is handmade in Nicaragua. And then we make the shirt in Mexico. So that's just with that shirt, right? Right. Each product is a little different. Right. So this jacket that I have on, this is a saco. We call it a saco. And these are loomed on foot pedal looms in Mexico that are at least 125 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And so like 3 generations have been doing the exact same. It's 100% wool. And once they make it on the foot pedal looms, then we assemble it. We get the materials from different places in Mexico. What's cool about it is our methods of making and producing these products is 500-year-old methods. It's not like you can't buy this at Target. You can't buy this like anywhere, literally anywhere. Even if you go to Mexico, you can't find our product because We not only work with the artisans that make it in this ancient fashion, and I mean ancient fashion because the
500
Spaniards,
years old.
yeah, well, the Spaniards brought the foot pedal looms to Mexico 500 years ago. Well, it was Cortez, and so it's Cortez brought all that, and then they created a big textile industry in Tlaxcala where we make all of our stuff. But what's neat is, well, that's neat. But another neat thing is if you go to Mexico, our products are uniquely designed by us. So we worked with fashion designers.
So you guys picked the design and then were like, here you go. And then
we created it.
Wow.
From scratch. So we would get like stuff that we liked and we were inspired with. We worked with fashion designers in Mexico and created stencils for our products. And it took several prototypes. You're talking about prototype after prototype. And they were like, oh, this is amazing. This is the stencil we'll use. And so, I mean, it's very Mexican, very artisanal, but even if you go to Mexico and you go to like those shops that are all artisanal stuff, you won't find anything like what we sell.
That it's uniquely Panchos blanket. It's you guys.
Yeah.
And I know that probably took so much work and just the idea of having to craft something is very unique to just a myriad of things out in life. But like, you know, whether it's this studio or like we were talking Jiu-Jitsu earlier, we'll get into that. There's like it's not going to be perfect the first time.
Yeah.
And then just, you know, you just have to be willing to put in that work. But a big thing I was looking at was, you know, I was just researching generational changes, and I want to read it word for word because it blew me away. But they did surveys about Gen Z. So like my sister is Gen Z. She's 22. She just graduated with her bachelor's in biology, minor in chemistry. And she wants to go for her master's, and the world's her oyster. She's out here up in Kansas City, like financially responsible, doing multiple jobs while going to school. And so I started looking up just Gen Z itself. And so they, so let me start off here, make sure it's correct. So the studies for Gen Z, so they were born around 9/11. Right? So they were born in 9/11, right? So then they witnessed, you know, economic growth after, obviously battling terrorism. Excuse me. Again, which was the longest war in our history. Then, of course, the crash of the 2008 recession. And then all of this information and technology they had since birth. So, like, for me, I didn't get a computer until, like, the 4th grade. Like, my sister already had my parents had phones, like they had everything already there. So they got to deal with all that amount of information. And so part of the study was like they learned quickly to take in a bunch of information and then siphon out crap and then pick what they want. And so due to these events for themselves, and they witnessed their parents struggle, they had to watch them use their money accordingly. Individuals from Gen Z had to fend for themselves in more ways than one, but especially financially. From these studies and surveys, they determined Gen Z is the perfect balanced generation in terms of financial responsibility and company valuation. They based this evaluation on 3 things from a company standpoint specifically. If this company does not meet these 3 requirements, they will not purchase it or want anything to do with the business or work with them. If it doesn't have all 3, they're done. And then that's quality, purpose, and then cost effectiveness for whatever their personal budget is. So quality, it's the merchandise must be built to last. Like this shirt, amazing, right? So quality is perfect. Like if it's a cheap design, if it's a cheap feeling material, you can slap a majority of the major brands on that shirt, and they'll go, nah, they've gone. So you need quality. And then in the study, 82% of the time, they would say, you know, if they slapped like, you know, not to call out Nike, but if you slap Nike on a cheap t-shirt, they're like, nah, there's other brands that have better quality stuff. Gone. Second one is purpose. The company or brand has to have a specific purpose or message behind it. If it doesn't focus on giving back, focusing on progress in society, and just in it to make money, ultimately that company doesn't care about the end consumer, i.e. them. If this company doesn't show this, then, or let me rephrase that. If the company doesn't show this, and then I put demonstrate it consistently, like how you were genuinely actually giving back, right, and doing things in this community, 88% of the time they won't even do business with that company or buy their stuff. And so it went purpose, quality, and then the thing they could leverage for themselves, because it's kind of individual, is of course cost effective. So the cost of the product is flexible if the two above are met, because they are happy to put their money into a good company that cares about doesn't care about dollars, but cares about themselves. They had to deal with the companies in their lifetime that didn't care about the i.e. end consumer and the generations before them. If the company is too expensive for their budget and too cheap, 78% of the time they will pass on it. It needs to be right in the middle for them to be able to purchase. My goodness, this sparkling water every time. I love the sparkling water, but then my body thinks it's a soda and then just bubbles. I'm like, but I brought that up because your company, you co-own it, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what you guys do and what you make is all of those things put together. So for Gen Z and beyond, then those kids will adapt to how their parents did things, and they'll probably have their own little their own little thing.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, you're developing something that's worthwhile and will be here for a long time. And I think that's really important for you guys to know, because you're doing a lot of good, but also giving back to the community, but also making things that actually matter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of different things, right? Because it is a piece of art. It's artistry.
Mm-hmm.
It's clothes. It's generosity. It's also an exportation of culture, because it's very a cultural thing too.
Right.
And tons of Latinos in Kansas City and just in America in general, they love their heritage. And so the thing about Latin heritage is it's so similar to each other too. It's just, all those colors, you would think that's Mexican, but that's Nicaraguan.
Right.
And who knows the difference? A lot of people don't have a freaking clue. And those woke people will be like, "Oh my God, that's culture appropriation. What do you mean there's no difference, bro? Tell me the difference. What have you even been to Nicaragua? You don't even know Spanish. Those people who try to virtue signal like crazy.
Right.
But the truth is, cultures in general, I don't know what race has to do with it, but it has something to do with it. But geographically, cultures share so much of a very unique art about it and expression.
Mm-hmm.
That's why their music is very similar.
Right.
Asians, Hispanics, white people, black people, their cultures are so similar to each other.
Right.
That if you're from an outside looking in, you wouldn't know the difference, because you don't know the language yet. You haven't been taught about the colors and the beats and all that stuff, and that's what I've experienced living in Mexico for so long. I was like, wow, this is so similar to Costa Rica. I lived in Costa Rica for a bit. I've been all over Latin America. I've been in Afghanistan. I've been in Iraq, and I see that people groups and geographical locations, their cultural expressions are so similar, as long as it's amongst thousands of years. You're having cousins, and you're talking about grandma said this, and they've been doing that for thousands of years, and so the culture is very similar to each other.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't know unless you're inside that little bubble. You would have no idea outside. You'd be like, oh, that's...
Yeah, and it's also thousands of years of cultural expression.
Right.
Which is their art, their colors, what they like to do. Like, this is very Spanish. What do you call it? Spanish inspired, right? Because the Spanish were the ones that brought the foot pedal loom in the first place. It's not Aztec at all.
I'm digging that you not only use this to make your products, but that you have an in-depth knowledge of where it came from, how it came about.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, because you'd be like, oh, what a cool shirt with a cool little pocket, and you're like, hold on, let me tell you something.
Yeah. Well, so a big part of what you're saying too is we're selling to a people that want these three things, but it's a cultural sell. Like, people care so much about what they're getting, where it's coming from.
Right.
And that was what attracted me to even start this at all. because I liked the story. I was like, that's really cool that we make things from here. And I'm going to these mercados, these marketplaces in Mexico all the time because my family's still there. And so I go to these things and I'm like, this is really cool because I feel like I'm from a different place now.
Right.
So I can appreciate it from like a touristy, someone who would love to have this coat, but I live in New York or I live in Chicago. How could I get a coat like that to someone who lives over there?
Right.
Because now I'm no longer necessarily from Mexico,
So your family's down there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where were you born?
No. So I was born in North Carolina.
Okay.
When I was 8, my family became missionaries to Mexico, and they're still missionaries. They're the reason why we have the community kitchen, which we've helped provide over 60,000 meals since COVID started. That has a lot to do with the Panchos blanket and everything. So they're still there, and they live there now. Like that's where their life's at. And my brother
because that was something I wanted to get into. I grew up in the church, and there is a positive and a negative to it. I guess I'll give both. So I have a 9-year-old. So he'll be 9 in March. So if you do the math, I'm 26. So even though I was from a little kid in the church and very much, that's where I developed my relationship. It's where I developed a lot of the ideas and method behind adding value and doing things not for viewership, I guess if you would say, but doing it because that's what we're literally here to do, is be here for each other. I think my favorite quote was like, we are the worst thing you can do to a person is like put them alone, like in isolation by themselves for too long. Right, you get antsy, like that's why like the hole in prison, like these little.
It's literally the worst punishment for the worst people in prison.
Yes,
solitary confinement.
Go in there by yourself. How long?
Yeah.
We're not gonna tell you. It's like I don't. It's. I like to think. I used to think I'd be okay. I'm like, there's a scene in one of my favorite movies, Rocket Man.
Mm-hmm.
Have you not the one about Elton John? But it's like 1997, I think is when it came out. Mm-hmm. But it's a nerd who is like working at NASA, and then they're doing a trip to like Mars, and they have to do the isolation. Mm-hmm. So they do it for I think 24 hours, and they put them next like side by side, and they close it so there's no light, like there's nothing, no sound. It's dead quiet. It's just you alone. And for 24 hours, he's fine. He's entertaining himself, but he's annoying the guy next to him. And I'm like, I like to think I'd be that guy. Nope. I'd end up being the guy who's going crazy next door, who's yelling because he's talking too loud, And I just think that part of accepting like responsibility and doing things that make you grow is also doing things for other individuals, not for yourself. And so, like I said, we were talking before we turned the cameras on. There's this cool connection that I get to have by having this little spot, which is like eventually there'll be connections I get to make or be a player in that game with like connecting athletes, artists, people in Kansas City and outreaching who with brands like yourself, mm-hmm. or introducing, the audience to someone like you and your company,
Yeah.
And a lot of my stuff does come from, being in the church. But then, of course, when you have a kid coming around, they were like, no. They were like, gone, you bye-bye. Like and the more I talk to it, like people about, whether it's, I word it in spirituality or your religion or whatever defines you as a person, they always have the same kind of, I was doing this, and instead of adding to my life, they just made it worse. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't think that's what we're here to do. I think we're here to, just help each other the best way that we can with our limited amount of time here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
And I just think that your company's doing that. But
I think church has talk about the most complex story in the world, which is, you can't separate religion from humanity. It's our experience.
Mm-hmm.
Go to anywhere and people are going to be praising God or a form of God,
Yeah, you're
And-
always looking up to the stars. Every they're like, "What's up there?" You're like,
Right.
I feel like if that wasn't something we like, if we didn't do that, then you'd be like, okay, maybe.
Or, or go to anywhere where there's suffering and you're not going to find one atheist ever.
Mm,
You go to Africa, you're not going to find an atheist. Go
right.
to Afghanistan, go to Iraq. The atheists are only in privileged countries because
Wow.
um,
I never thought of that.
I think that God allows us to suffer
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is for us to actually seek Him, pursue Him, and pursue a relationship there.
Right.
Because without it, if you're never hungry, you'll never look for food, and He's the bread of life.
Mm.
And like that's what Jesus said about Himself. And I've never met somebody who, when you go through the ringer, like true suffering,
Mm-hmm.
you don't ask for help from something, anything, anyone.
Right.
Like, what do I say? Do I say 1,000 Hail Marys, or like,
Right.
do I give my life to Jesus, to Buddha? Like, what's going on? But I need an exterior help.
Right.
And the Bible even says that. It says, I think it was Paul, he was like, suffering, like, rejoice when you suffer, because suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope is never put to shame.
Mm.
So one of the ways that we cope with our reality in general, because the fact is everyone you know is going to die, everybody you love is going to die, right?
Right.
And so how do we cope with that reality? We have to not necessarily create, but it's really easy to cling to faith when you're so desperate that the people you love the most, you'll see them again.
Right.
And then some people would like to act all hard, like, I'm fine. I've come to the realization that there's nothing, there's la la la. It's like, bro, keep talking from your freaking BMW or whatever privileged place you're at.
Exactly.
But you're not in pain yet. When you really love someone and they're gone, and also I think it's a defense mechanism a lot of people have because they've been hurt by the church or whatever, and they're just like,
Correct.
I don't need that. Sure, fine. Deal with your pain however you need to, but in general, in like very general terms, people they need hope. They
Mm-hmm.
need it, and they'll cling to almost any faith. I'm not saying like it's Christianity or anything. There's a ton of faiths, but you're gonna believe in something.
Right. Well, and then I remember watching Jordan Peterson,
Mm-hmm.
and he was, I mean, I don't know if he took a lot of heat or backlash, but there was a period where they were wondering what his belief system is, and that allowed him to say and do the things that he obviously is doing. And he just, I don't know if he didn't have an answer yet, because he's he thinks things through all the way. Like, that was something that latched me onto him, because he doesn't just, someone fires a question, he doesn't immediately have a response. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
let me analyze your question, process it, digest it. Here's my response. And, I watched him like go through it with another Christian podcast guy, and he was like, it's either the best, biggest, most extravagant lie, or the absolute truth.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I don't want to chance it. And during that podcast, he started to cry. He's like, oh, it is the truth. Like, immediately was like,
Oh,
So-
yeah, I remember that clip.
yeah. And I'm like, wow. Because he's the guy who went through everything. I think he did like a 3-hour podcast on the first 3 like sentences of Genesis. You know what I mean? And I'm like, this dude thinks between the lines.
Yeah.
And he's saying this, but it's a big cornerstone in the things that I do, and the things that I've watched you do and look up, and people who mention your company. Is that kind of a stable for you, like something that's in your DNA, like a building block?
My faith?
Yeah,
or
the
what?
faith. The
Yeah.
faith that did it help Panchos blanket? Did it help find, because a lot of people, you can say, I want to start a company, and then you can just go over to the computer, go to like a print on demand thing, and start trying to make T-shirts. But you guys didn't
Mhm.
do that. You went the harder path.
The hardest path.
Yeah. How?
Yeah. Because like you're saying, there's 1,000 easier ways to do it,
Mm-hmm.
which is, hey man, get on Dropshipping, go on Alibaba. I can literally make you a 10-step paragraph order on how to start one, and it's so
yeah.
easy. Because there's already systems done where you could just make a logo, make an Instagram, and then start a Shopify store,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole system's there for you.
Right.
All you got to do is pay Facebook ads, get some pictures, and then they'll fulfill all the orders for you. You don't even touch or see your product.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the easy way. That's a great way. It's not bad.
But correct. But I am. I'll admit to it. I tried to do things the easy way, and of course you were like, "Oh, it's all there," and then it didn't feel right.
Yeah.
So when you say that you take the extra time, you really work on the product, you really make sure that it's not only good for the person buying it and wearing it, but that it's doing good and that the proceeds from anything goes back to the community. Just like you said, you're doing things in Kansas City, you're helping in Mexico. Is that the Feed a Fam?
Yeah.
Yeah. And just amazing things are happening. But that's something that I also want to get into, because this is a difficult, like you said, the most difficult way is to make something like that and make it look real good, go through prototype after prototype. What was the process like when you made this company, like this business? How'd you get there?
So I was blacklisted by the State Department. It was silly, but I was working for a company. It was called Triple Canopy. It used to be Blackwater in Iraq.
Okay.
And so I was a military contractor. And I wanted to do something more along those lines. I was at UMKC. I got my bachelor's in business, entrepreneurship.
Great school.
Yeah, great school. I knew a lot of people in the FBI and some people who worked for State Department, and I was thinking about going that route. All I needed was a bachelor's degree. So that's why I came back to KC, finish it out. I had like a couple years left. I finished it, and then I was on my way back to Iraq. And they were just like, "Hey, we don't know what's going on, but you can't come back and work." And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm like literally a month out from coming.
Like, I almost have it.
I'm like in mad credit card debt now,
right?
Because I was thinking I was about to go. I was partying in Mexico, bro. I had just gotten over like this breakup, and I was like just partying my butt off in Mexico. And then they tell me you can't come back and work, and I'm like, what? Are you serious?
You're like, what happened?
Yeah.
Do you not know?
No. So I called them, and they're like, we don't know what happened, but it says that you tampered with a weapon, and so you can't work in any State Department contract job. And at that moment, I was like, I had a come to Jesus moment. I was like, okay, well now I need to figure out what am I going to do. And so that's when I connected with a friend of mine. I went to Virginia. I helped him with a church plant over there. And then I started Panchos Blanket because I wanted to be an entrepreneur anyways. I didn't want to work for anyone, and especially church. I don't, I mean, I love God. I am a devout Christian.
Ditto, right over here.
But I'm not a churchy guy. Not anymore.
Right.
I mean, I used to be big time, but I mean, just so much happens over the years, and I was like, I don't really want to be too involved with the institution as much anymore, even though I respect everybody who does it. It has its purpose. God uses everything in the world, even the institutions that everybody hates so much, whatever, he uses it for good.
Right.
And it's used for bad because it's full of people. And the biggest problem with the world is people. And the only solution is people. So, I mean, we're in the conundrum.
Right.
So that's kind of how I started, though. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go back to Mexico, and I'm going to start this leather bag company. And then it turned into these wool coat company. And so I still have some things in the works, other ideas that I want to do.
Excellent.
But, yeah.
Well, I'm on board for whatever. Okay. I'm over here like, yeah, I feel good. Like it feels like I'm not wearing a shirt, but also wearing a shirt.
Yeah, man. It's a good shirt.
But that was a big deal when, so this isn't my first podcast rodeo. So I remember starting, and I'm like, okay, easy. Just you probably go on Amazon and get cheap microphones and do this and do that, and it probably sounds that good. And then you're like, not even close. I think I probably had at least three attempts to do something that was gonna look like this. And so
wow.
So each one was the cameras, they got to be good, lenses got to be good, lights got to make sure it's 60% there, 36% over here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Make sure the light down shows the blue, so that way it's like it shows the background. And speaking of lights, I just looked right at that. So it's like part of developing something important is, like you said, struggle, right? But you have to be able to be uncomfortable and like look at yourself and go, why did this mess up? What am I doing wrong? Am I taking the easy way? Yes. Okay. If I spend this amount of time and get the cameras and do all this stuff, then it'll look good. Nope. You messed up the lighting.
Yeah.
Lighting's cheap. And then you're like, oh no. And then you're like, so there's just multiple
I feel like
attempts.
if you do it the easy way, you're going to fail.
Oh yeah. But that's a good lesson.
That's a good lesson.
Very good lesson. I remember doing that and I'm like, why isn't all this stuff working? Blah, blah, blah. And when you're approaching something, and I like to take this from training, so we can get into this jiu-jitsu background, because you're a purple belt, okay? All I knew is I saw an image of you, like, sitting down, like, rolling with someone, and I'm like, he does jiu-jitsu? And I was like, I love chess, right? So, like, I love playing chess on my phone. I love playing chess with other people. And it's not in a way that's like, haha, I bested you. Like, I'm not the Queen's Gambit over here. I'm just saying that, like, it lets me process things 2-3 steps ahead. And so when I realized you could do that with jiu-jitsu, incorporate competitiveness, they have competitions, then you can, there's, like you said, it's unlimited potential in jiu-jitsu. And I was hooked. I'm in love. I'm like, I could do this forever. I could literally forever until like I'm 95 and my knees give out. Like,
oh yeah.
And I think the best thing that jiu-jitsu taught me was, yes, there's going to be struggle. You're going to mess up and you're going to be uncomfortable, right? I mean, if you've never been choked out, if you've never been put in a specific, like I remember going in pretty confident. And then within like 30 seconds to a minute, I'm like, I'm in a lot of trouble. Like I'm immediately in a choke. How do I escape, right? And you have to push that boundary just a little bit. I'm not saying don't tap. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you have to push how long until the lights come down.
Don't tap if it's a choke.
Right. You'll be
just
fine.
Go to sleep.
You'll be fine. But
definitely tap if it's anything else.
Keep the shoulder. Yeah, keep the shoulder. Keep the ankle.
Right.
Keep the knee. Yeah, you want all that stuff. But without even knowing it, it made me search those things, like seek them out. And then once I found something like that, when there's a period of, oh, it's uncomfortable in any avenue, I was fine. Yeah. I realized I'm like, oh, I'm used to it. I'm used to doing it. I think that's probably the biggest lesson it taught me, because when this was not an easy start, we have a nice place, nice facility, but it's never easy. But there is a point where people just quit. They just go, nope, too much, right?
Absolutely, man. I feel like that's a big lesson that I've been learning lately, and I'm 32, so
no way.
These lessons are
I need to step my game up.
What's happening right now, like in my 30s, I'm like, wow, man, I'm really starting to understand a lot of things. It's different. Every season's different, but one currently that I'm really harping on is the consistency element, and the fact that there's no luck is almost non-existent in real life. Yep. Because if you win the lottery, you're going to die poor. It's like
a majority
statistically,
of people
statistically, you didn't win anything. You won for a season, but the laws of the universe, the laws that are even in the Bible, a man reaps what he sows. The Bible even says that God will not be mocked. Like, it is almost mocking God if luck did exist.
Correct.
Because a man will reap what he sows. If you sow hard work, it's a guarantee you're going to get it. It's 100%, and you're consistent, because rain will come. You work the field, rain will come, and then the science does the rest.
Yeah. Right.
But if you win the lottery and you didn't work hard, you already had bad habits because you were buying lottery tickets.
Right.
And then you win the lottery, you're going to be spending it on everything that you shouldn't be spending it on, a bunch of liabilities, not assets, because you're not even trained to manage that kind of money.
Correct.
And the next thing you know, all the money's gone. And so were you lucky at all? No, you were actually unlucky, if there's even a such thing as luck, because the worst thing that you can happen is to be poor, go to rich, and then go back to being poor, because Then you experienced ecstasy and experienced the loss of all the ecstasy, which is way worse than never experiencing ecstasy at all, because then you never suffer
know what
the
it's like.
loss, the tragedy. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I remember watching, my mom loves HGTV. So growing up, we used to watch HGTV, and they do those home giveaways. A $1 million mansion in the middle of Denver and on the mountainside. And then I remember, like if you look at the, like in the screen, there's like a bunch of like text, and it's like taxes, property tax, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, and it gives you a number of how much that is in that location and whatnot. And I remember sitting really close to the TV and like reading it, and I'm like, oh. And I remember being probably like 12, and I go, I'd win it and then sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom goes, what? You wouldn't live in there? I go, look how much it says. I was like, you have to pay that? It says per year. And she's like, oh. And it like shifted their thinking about that same thing. But I like where you're going with this whole, because I am a huge, obviously, believer in like longevity, future, and I have a kid now. So that really made me wake up to looking at things. And one of them is, I had Ty in here, and we talked about real estate portfolio investments. You know, I've been taking, like, LinkedIn has an amazing just resource of learning, just everything about investing. Boom, 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 boom. And I remember fucking up a lot of, I mean, I did the whole, you know, I had crypto, I had, you know, money in, you know, dividend accounts that then I'm like, well, I want this thing though. So then I take it out, and then I'm like, you know, and
you pay those capital gains.
Yes.
And you pay the taxes.
Terrible. Bad idea. You know, it's just, I didn't know any of that. But now that I do, now I can do it responsibly moving forward. And so it's very important. I really like the idea of people understanding that you have to mess up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the difference between someone who's courageous, someone who's, well, in other words, brave, someone who's arrogant, and someone who's afraid, you know, because you should be afraid about a lot of things, but if you do it, then you're brave, because fear and courage, they go together. You're arrogant if you do it and you're not afraid and you have no experience, but you're bold if you've done it and you have experience.
Right.
Right. And that's the thing that I'm aiming to be now in this phase of life. I did a lot of trading before. I lost a lot of money with options trading in crypto, but
yeah.
Totally done with that for now until I get some liquidity back. But but I realized fear is good because I'm brave when I do it. Despite that, if I do it enough times, my courage will purchase me being bold. Everybody wants to be that guy who's fearless, but who's done it before, and that's why he's fearless. I hate the guy. Everybody hates the guy. You know, a guy coming in the gym, he's like, he's the wrestler. You know, he's like, or not the wrestler. Wrestler's actually pretty good. A guy who's just a bodybuilder who's like, I could tap anybody out here. Why is he not afraid right now? He's in a jiu-jitsu gym full of killers because he's arrogant. Yeah. He hasn't purchased boldness, which we have to purchase through courage, which happens when you're afraid.
Wow.
You know, and so a lot of good lessons with jiu-jitsu. But speaking of the lottery, I don't know if any of your listeners buy lottery tickets, but if they do, don't buy lottery tickets. That's a way the IRS launders your money. Because if you win the lottery, the person who they tax the person.
Yeah,
you have to pay tax. Of money. So everybody's money, literally, you paid taxes to buy the lottery ticket, and then whoever wins it pays like 60% off of that, like a 6% haircut, dude.
Yeah, they were like, oh, like, but and again, you have bad habits, so then you go, oh, well, that's still a lot of money, and you don't see.
Sure,
you're like, oh, whoa, you're like, what?
It doesn't matter though. It's everybody else is paying the IRS, not you. I mean, yeah, you're paying, but it's not your money. It's free. It's free money for you. But everybody else, all of the losers, which is 99.9% of everyone who bought the ticket, they're paying all that to the government. They're laundering your money after they already charged you income tax, after they charged you tax to buy anything that you bought ever. They charge you tax on that. They're taking away a ton of your money. They're laundering it.
Well, and there was, I was actually, I didn't realize it was a gift, because when I realized all that information, for example, about the lottery, I go, oh, well, that's dumb. I just won't. My dad was buying lottery tickets left and right when it was like really, really high, like 1.2 billion or something crazy. And it was like not millions, like a ton of money. And they were like, I go, what would you even do? Like, and that's something that I think, like, people. So like I said, I'm 26. So I think people coming into like middle of their 20s, like, you have to use your 20s to like try everything, fail at most of it, and then find that thing that really makes you want to put all your effort into, right? And then once you do that, then anything that benefits and comes back, you'll have an appreciation for whatever that is.
Yeah.
And that's why people lose all that money, because they're like, "Ooh, I didn't do any work. I didn't do anything. I just went and bought a ticket at a gas station, got lucky, and now what do we do now?" And then I always tell people, I'm like, if I had the crazy number to me is like $3 million. If I had that in my bank right now, I don't think I'd change anything. But 3 years ago, I would have bought everything dumb. Like, it wouldn't have, because I didn't earn it.
Yeah.
And so it's there's that balance between giving back, finding what gives you purpose, and then giving value to others. And once all of that kind of comes together in whatever you want to do, then I think you have an appreciation for then growing yourself. And part of that was your real estate, right? I saw that you had dabbled into that. What made you get your Realtor license?
A lot of debt. So I was like, all right, I need to make some cash so that I can pay off some Panchos blanket stuff. And also it is a way that I want to, it's an industry I definitely want to be in.
Right.
Just because I understand how money works somewhat. I know that the government will keep on printing money for as long as we allow them, and they can't print land at least.
Right.
But sure, they could take your land if they wanted, and they have done that to many people groups throughout history. They're like, "Oh, I'm going this Trail of Tears."
That's ours now. You get walking.
Yeah, get walking. Yeah.
No, I was here. They're like,
yep.
Well, and something else that's important is obviously people are freaking out because obviously crypto went like way south.
Yeah.
And so then people found out they can't take money out, and then I'm like, okay, so there's a method where not only do you have to diversify things, but also what's more tangible than property, So you said you have how's the crypto going for you?
No, property is I mean, in my opinion, I wouldn't, only for the sake of diversification, would I get anything crypto right now.
Yeah.
Even though I do believe in Bitcoin to a degree, I don't know where it's going to land.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin. Like, there's a ton of cryptocurrencies which I wouldn't even dabble with, but real estate is the safest thing to invest your money, period.
Right.
Because it's land, man. It's going to be here well after you're gone.
Yeah.
And it appreciates. And then Kansas City, we were talking earlier about how much stuff is coming to Kansas City.
Yes.
It's almost guaranteed to appreciate in land.
Right. What's all coming here? You had a bunch.
Well, there's the Royal Stadium, $2 billion ordeal.
Yep.
That's going to be right downtown.
Insane.
Meta is bringing down a big headquarters here.
Right.
Yeah, so stuff like that. FIFA World Cup is coming.
Yeah, and that was something that I started to notice, and it seems like, at least when I started to kind of look around and see that this area is kind of getting revitalized and they're really changing everything, I'm like, someone knows something that we don't know. I'm like, either they saw the opportunity to revitalize the area and then realized that these things would show up, or maybe they knew ahead. It's just, I think every wealthy person has 7 different avenues of income coming in.
Yeah.
And it's all diverse. And so, you don't have to have all 7 right away, obviously. But it got me thinking, okay, and I saw this by example in many people's lives, whether it's parents, grandparents, they're all, my parents are worried about retirement. And I'm like, what about me? What about my kiddo? What about Madden? What's he gonna have as anything? I'm responsible now for for him and the rest of his life. So now I have to look at these different things and, not be an expert in it, but at least know how to do them.
Mm-hmm.
And something else when it comes to like investing, I was doing some coursework today, and most people are like, oh, I'll just put it in something small, but like a CD or something that has a little bit more interest than putting it in your bank account. But what they don't know is that that's still losing you money if the inflation rate is higher than what that's going to pay out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh. And then it was like, sure, maybe you want a $500,000 pot and you have it was like $277,000, right? But if you put it in something that's less than inflation, now you have less than the initial $277,000.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you have to know all the information, at least in a gist form like that, to be able to make an informed decision.
Oh, yeah. No. Banks have been using and abusing people and their lack of information like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pointless to try to set up a retirement fund right now.
Yeah.
Or a CD, stuff like that. Inflation is at an all-time high. We'll never see it like this again.
Mm-mm.
I don't think. I hope to God no, because we're going to look just like, and I'm sorry to use the cliche, Venezuela, or these places that the inflation went so high that you'd have to have a barrel of bills to buy some bread.
Oh, yeah.
Terrible. But that's not going to be our issue, though, because we have, like, we're not really printing money, even though we are printing money, but a lot of it is just digital currency.
Mm-hmm.
I don't foresee something like a collapse, like some people would be fearing, but definitely the lowering of your buying power for sure.
Correct.
But the thing is, they shouldn't, like, in my opinion, when I talk to people who are interested in buying houses, for right now, do not put your money in a bank sitting there, because it's dying. It's getting eaten away. Put it in hard assets like, sure, gold, but real estate, local real estate. You're there. You
Mm-hmm.
can see it. It's a land. Put a freaking garden in there. Whatever you want. You can do anything you want with that spot.
Anything you want.
But it's there and it represents money.
Mm-hmm.
And you can exchange it with someone else. And there's always going to be people who believe that land is valuable. We go to war over land.
Right.
That's how important it is. We kill people for that.
Right. Well,
yeah.
Perfect. So you are a former Marine.
Yes.
Describe to me I'm curious how you got into the military itself.
I was a little kid before we came to Mexico, went to Mexico, and 9/11 happened, and we invaded Iraq. Not sure what those two had to do with each other, but they did, right? To get inflammatory on the podcast.
Terror.
Terrorist weapons of mass destruction.
It's all over there with all the oil and stuff.
And we all were like, yeah, he's right. That freaking guy. Anyways, so that shit happened. And remember we invaded Iraq, and I was a little kid, though. And I saw on the news, it was like a bunch of Marines were getting off of this helicopter, and they looked like giants, because they had these huge packs on, and they were just unloading off the helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked my mom, I was like, hey, Mom, who are them? Who are they? And she was like, oh, those are Marines. They're the best. She did, she just...
Right, that's if you ask, they're like, think. Marines are the best, always.
Right. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be a Marine one day. And that day I decided I was going to go into the Marine Corps till I was 18. I mean, I grew up in Mexico after that, but I was just, I latched onto an identity at that point,
mm-hmm.
where people were like, hey, so what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was always like, I'm going to be a Marine. I want to be a Marine. And so when I turned 18, I went to North Carolina and enlisted. I became a Marine, and I hated every second of it. Yeah, it was terrible. As soon as I got there, dude, I was like, this is not fun anymore. The boot camp part's over, and it was fun. It was like the movies. And now this sucks. This is horrible.
The worst decision. I waited this long for this.
Where's the strength and honor that everybody was talking about? This is ridiculous. No, there was now in hindsight, it's so different, because you gotta remember, I was going through the craziest amount of culture shock, because I was a missionary kid in Mexico, homeschooled in Mexico.
Oh no.
Going straight to, never been to high school or even a public school. Going from that to the Marine Corps. I couldn't relate to anyone. I couldn't understand what was going on. I mean, I knew English, but
right.
it was just they would say all these inside jokes, and at least they could relate to each other, and I was just so lost in the sauce.
You were like,
And
I grew up in a homeschool.
yeah, and you have fake ideas of how the world works too at that time, because you're just like, yeah, we're fighting terrorism. Yeah, we're it's like World War II. Like it was a different generation, but you try to correlate those movies and those amazing stories and with what you're going through at the moment. You're like, this has nothing to do with what I saw in the movies.
Like, this is
culture shock.
This isn't Tom Hanks.
Yeah,
like, this isn't.
I haven't seen anyone cry for their mama yet with their guts in their hands.
Yeah, please.
Instead, they're like, fuck yeah.
Right.
It's totally different.
Aim that way. Just shoot that way.
Shoot at that building.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if they're crying and stuff. Nobody's in there. It's okay.
Just that one. Well, and I think that something else, and I mean, you seem like you're going to relate to this, and I'm not trying to speak for you, but something that I had to break down to other people was, at a time I wanted to have some kind of, early 20s. I'm like, I need a purpose. I need something to do. I need something, if I do this, then, ultimately I'll have, all the negative things that come from seeking something in a desperate fashion. And then obviously the military they'll take you hand over foot. I just have to walk in. They're like, of course, and they just, yeah, sign all that, and then this, and then I go, but I do have a kid. They were like, shit, like, it just got way more complicated because it's just me. So then, then they were like, who's he gonna stay with? Who's he gonna leave? So there was a lot more paperwork that they were not happy to distribute, and I obviously didn't complete it, so I never went. Thank goodness. But shortly after that, I realized that, so we get fed things, and they get fed things. So ultimately, if you were hypothetically staring down a scope at somebody doing the same thing you're doing, it's probably because they got fed information the same way you got fed information, just differently about you. And I'm like, so in a weird way, I was like, well, thank goodness I never wanted to have to shoot or do some kind of like hardcore action towards someone who, once this realization hit me, I'm like, I would just be shooting someone just as ignorant as me for believing what they said,
Yeah.
And I just think that that's a difference in where you're at, because you don't really know what is really going on.
Well, there's a book called On Killing. It's a good book. I recommend it for anyone who has issues with that. But it goes through the psychological warfare, or the psychological training of training soldiers how to kill people and not be so, sad about it, or, PTSD type stuff. And they created, instead of boxes, they changed it from boxes to silhouettes, to human silhouettes. And also they would, I don't think there's an issue at all anymore today with killing people. I think it's extreme. They've made it so easy with video games and simulations where it's as real as it gets without actually doing it,
Oh, yeah.
But back in the day, and like with Vietnam, that's when they started to bust out silhouettes, and the kill ratio went up a lot because they were just used to shooting things that looked like people.
Right.
And it's you also give your enemy certain nicknames, like names that I wouldn't even say on this podcast, but we would say it over there. And because you dehumanize your enemy.
Right.
And it's not personal, it's just how it is. It's war.
Right.
When you're too young to really go through, why am I really here? And that's when I really started to get into politics, when I was over there, to start to care about it. Because at first you just think, oh, good, bad, terrorists, patriots, and then you're like, that's that simple. But you're a kid.
Yeah.
You don't know. You're a freaking 18, 19-year-old.
Right. You immediately signed up. You're like, yeah, let's do this thing.
But when you're there, you're like, huh. So we're burning this guy's poppy fields. Okay, that makes sense. We make heroin out of poppy. Who makes the most heroin than anyone? Pharmaceutical companies.
Exactly.
So I mean, like, but who are we? Oh, but
Excuse me.
But the Mujahideen were using it, and blah blah blah. And so now the Al Qaeda is using it, and they are connected with Osama bin Laden, and just all this stuff. And you're just like, oh, what are we really doing here? Why are we taking this guy's field away and then giving them cucumbers to harvest? It doesn't make any sense. And then, oh, well, we're freeing them from the Taliban because the little kid that just gave us information, he was just decapitated. Oh, we are actually fighting evil. These dudes are evil. These dudes are bad, which they are. I like Taliban, bad.
Yes,
right?
bad.
American
bad.
soldiers, we are the nicest to the people. other than droning and bombing everybody, right? It's not personal at that point.
Right, not
But
personal.
if you ever meet us face to face,
Uh-huh.
the American soldiers are going to be extremely kind to people, like 9 times out of 10. But I mean, it's so complicated when you get into all the weeds of it. And then it's not the soldier's fault who's on the ground, man. He's just a kid.
Right.
He's just a kid. And it's always been that way for big interests, huge corporate national interests. We send our children to die. That's just how it's always been. It's not nothing new.
Yeah, it's not, like I said, it's nothing new. And I was watching, I forget, I just had it. I forgot the TV show. But there's a period where it's literally a pharmaceutical company who can't make quota on a specific drug they have. And then guess what? Drug lord comes in and goes, guess what I got?
Is it Ozark?
Is it? It might be Ozark. I think it's Ozark.
Ozark has a spin like that.
Yes. And then he goes, it's heroin, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's Ozark. Shocker.
Yeah.
I mean, spoiler.
It's a pretty good show.
Oh, so good. I watched all 4 seasons.
Yeah.
But, and it's that was another thing. I was like, oh, if that happened, we'd have no clue. Zero. We would not know. So it's funny that you brought that up.
That stuff had to happen in Afghanistan. Stuff like that. It wasn't just about the poppy though. It's also the lithium mines that they have, and which is what our batteries have, like for our vehicles. And then as soon as we pulled out, China came in, and now China has deep interest in stuff going on in Afghanistan right now.
Right.
That's why we were there.
Yeah, I thought it was terror.
No.
Well, shoot.
That's why we stayed there. And also, there's so many reasons. You can't really say, no one can ever say, oh, the reason. There's no reason.
Right.
When interests collide, there's a lot of huge companies are about it. Pharmaceuticals, lobbyists, military industrial complex, medical industrial complex. They will always have similar interests. And so they work together.
I like you said, it's very easy to be 18 and go good, bad.
Yeah.
And then you were like, what about the gray? What about the other stuff?
What about the many colors?
Yeah, what about the stuff
Life
in
is
between?
colors.
Right. Okay, good analogy.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lot more that you probably won't and will never know, but they only give you this little nugget because then you get the accomplished task that they get to do after you're gone. And I remember telling people who have been in the military who, like, had just signed up and they were like, no, this is why I've had someone call me not an American for questioning that. And I was like, part of whether it's biblical or whether it's, just part of living everyday life, you have to question things to a certain degree. For example, one of the best ways I've ever witnessed God in my life is the moment that I begin to then start questioning and doing this and just having that feeling of well, okay. And then sitting down, not doing research, but looking different things up. And then somehow in that curiosity, now I'm closer to him by knowing background information on scripture that didn't really make sense,
Right.
Things like that. So there's a point in time, whether it comes to, your walk with God or with your everyday walk, where you have to question things. You have to question things in general, or else you're not going to learn and get better and blah, 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 personal development.
Yeah.
You
definitely have to question things. I think that it's more complicated today than ever because of the decentralization of information. Right. And then, but even though it's decentralized, we go into these echo chambers instantly. Because when I start to read
my group.
Oh yeah, when I start to read people's comments and opinions that I do not like, or an article that I don't like, I won't even finish it. I don't even want to know.
Right.
I just automatically know I don't jive with this. This is for me. I don't like this person's opinion. And half the time, a lot of times, you can tell their opinion about 90% of the things that they think about off of one opinion. Because they're all kind of interconnected with each other.
Yes.
You stop becoming original, but then it's kind of like what you were saying. We're not meant to be alone. Are you even meant to be original? How original can you get? Every single word you say is because you heard it and you learned it. Every single thing you do, even the reactions on your face, right? I think you learn that when you're really, really young. But I'm just saying, what original thing is about you? Really, what do you do that you don't imitate?
Right.
In a sense. I mean,
right, you pull inspiration from things that are around
yes.
you all the time, whether you're cognizant of it or not.
Yeah.
Like if you don't, no, I totally came up with this and that, and it's like, well, actually, I heard that from, you're writing a book about that? I heard that from that book like 20 years ago. What?
Yeah.
You're like, oh.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Well,
Another
mine's
scripture for you.
different. You're like, you just twisted the same thing. His name's Greg instead of, something else.
Yeah.
And that actually offends more people than I thought. Not I don't go around going like, that's not you. Yeah, that's fake. You're a copycat. I'm just saying that if you don't have a healthy outlook that way, in that kind of realm of curiosity, then you're gonna be like most people and be stagnant. And for me, I can't be stagnant.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a know-it-all and learn everything, but I also don't want to sit here and be like, no, and just immediately just write you off because it's not what I'm thinking. Does that make sense? Like if someone told me an opinion, and the easiest way is obviously politics, and then I go, but what about that other stuff right here that you're missing? They're like, nope, just this one. I'm like, what about this one? There's so many ways this can go, and they're just focused on that one thing. That's easier.
For sure.
But I feel like if you test things and you open up and you start to look around you in a healthy way like that,
that'll put you in a tribe as well, though. And I agree, and I'm in the same way. I mean, I question everything, bro.
Right.
Everything. And that puts me in with the people who question everything, though.
Yeah,
it's like
now
it's
we
a
are
type
in a
of
group.
person, know.
Damn.
And
my system's flawed. No,
no, that's fine. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. That people, they have to be in groups.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it in like everyone is original, which makes everybody not original.
Correct.
It's just an oxymoron.
Mm-hmm.
And
the human condition.
Yeah, and it's fine with me. Like when I say that, I know probably 90% of what you think by just telling me one thing or your opinion on things.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just because I think our champions will probably say the same stuff in the sense that, for example, you like Donald Trump. Okay. Then you probably like these like 10 influencers that always post stuff like in support of him or whatever. There's Benny Johnson.
Or opinions and topics that they pump out all the time.
Right. Or, you voted for Biden. Then, there's so many things that I could say about you. Like I could not say about you. I could assume about you. And I bet you I'd be right on a lot of these things just because it's your worldview.
Right.
Your worldview. Do you like MMA? If you like MMA, you like to watch it. It says a lot about you too.
Right.
Every little thing says a lot about you.
Correct. Well, and it's very funny because as my friends, who are between, either like 28 to 24, there's I don't want to get too much into the politics of things, but when I looked at a Democrat who voted for Biden and then one who voted for Trump, and I go, you guys have the same like process up here. You guys are just missing where there's a middle ground. Mm-hmm. And they're like, no, we don't want it. And I'm like, no, you can solve both issues if you work together, figure it out. And they're like, nope. I'm like, never mind. I guess you guys are just closed off. But I think it's just part of growing up. Like the more that I can't sit and watch the news. There's things that I just personally can't do, which makes me original. But then there's also a group that goes, man, we don't watch the news. We watch Joe Rogan, and that's our news. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I love that. And then now it's Joe Rogan versus the news. It's just you're always going to find these little things, these little, what did you say, echo chambers?
Yeah, echo chambers.
Of people. But I think that's also part of the jiu-jitsu thing where it's stepping out. You have to be willing to step out of that chamber every once in a while, learn a new idea, find out something else. But something else about the military, when it says you did two tours. Mm-hmm. Now you said you hated it.
Yeah.
Right.
Sucks.
Why 2? Is that because it was part of just the period of time where you were in the military? They had 2 tours to Afghanistan.
Yeah. So I was stationed in Hawaii. So Hawaii had 3 units. It was 1-3, 2-3, and 3-3. and one of them had to be rotating out every single, like, the whole time.
Okay, so
So-
you three just rotated on a different cycle together.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, technically, I got pretty lucky
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get deployed twice, because a lot of guys, because I only did 4 years, a lot of guys, if they do 4 years, sometimes they didn't even get deployed, you know. And I was able to deploy
so
twice.
are you saying you're lucky because you got to go over there and see this firsthand?
Yeah,
Okay, got
absolutely.
you. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sucked. It wasn't fun,
Right.
but at the same time, I would feel a huge. I wouldn't be happy to tell people, oh yeah, I was in the Marines. I was never deployed. I
Yeah.
never did. You know, at least I could say I was infantry. I was deployed. I have a combat
So-
action ribbon,
Yeah.
and that's really what you go for when you go into the Marine Corps.
Yeah, you go for. Well, that's something else that they give you. And my buddy, he's in the Army, and he has he takes a lot of pride in the medals and the look at the wall of awards, and I'm like, that's just for shooting targets. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's just, we do that at the range together. I don't know why. He goes, yeah, but the military side did a really good job at it.
Oh
And
my
I'm like,
gosh.
I could tell you did a good job. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen you do it. And so I just think that's part of a lost individual who really clings to that, because that's easier than feeling that weird loss. Stuck.
I don't say it for the flex sake, even though I guess everything we do and we say is somewhat of a flex. I don't know, but I mean, at least I did what I signed up for,
Correct.
and that's what I wanted to do. And
Well-
actually, it was funny because that helicopter thing that I told you about, I was actually Hilo Company, and I did exactly what I saw on the TV when I was a kid.
Was it cooler
Which
than the TV?
It sucks, bro. Because you're talking, it looks really cool,
Yeah.
right? But all that gear on, I weighed like 400 pounds.
Yeah,
You got all this ammo on. You have this huge Ilby pack. Everything weighs something.
right.
And you're just covered head to toe with all this gear. And you're like, I'm going to die. I think I broke my thumb getting on a helicopter because I fell. And it still is jacked up today. But,
Well, I think you had a healthy perspective by going and appreciating that you saw it firsthand. But my look at the war on terrorism was my uncle. So he left when I was my kiddo's age, and he was fun uncle, great, no big deal, always joking, always doing this. But when he came back, he got 2 Purple Hearts, because the last one that sent him home was, I think it was in a Humvee, and it ran over IED. Boom.
mhm.
I think he shot out, or somehow he got out, but most of the people inside did not.
Yeah.
They were full blast. It was before they had the shielding type.
Yeah,
deal.
yeah. It
And
was
so-
like the old school Humvee, the
Mhm.
flat.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so he was lucky, got shrapnel all through here, multiple different stuff. But when he came back, very, very different.
Yeah.
Just and it took a while to kind of get back into a swing of, oh, Uncle Matt. It at a period it was like Uncle Matt's gone, and then it was like, oh, he's back now. It just.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so it's good to have an outlook the way that you have from going experience something that no one else is going to experience.
Well, gosh, bro, we might go into some wars again.
Oh, I'm not saying
It's-
wars are going to happen. I'm saying that the majority of people will never be in a situation like you were in.
Oh,
Because, I think that the general consensus is, military's not really my thing, or this and that. And the only people that I've really met that join the military usually have, no offense, something that they are desperately trying to cling to, or fear of missing something.
mm-hmm.
And then they really like the awards on the wall because their job doesn't do that for them. And I'm like, you can have anything. You can do anything you want outside of your job, right?
Yeah.
You just have to, I don't know. I just think people don't see it that way, which is kind of sad.
People there. I met so many interesting people in the Marine Corps, and obviously I don't regret any of it. So when I say I didn't enjoy it, I'm not saying that it wasn't worth it. It was worth it. It was good. I'm just not the persona type that is. I'm not strung up like that. I'm really chill.
You should be down in
think.
Atlantis with your
Exactly.
ruling-
just on the beach. Actually, that's where I'm at.
Bring in the stud double. There's no.
Yeah. But you meet some amazing people, and that's where I started to. That was my first real introduction to the cultural divides that are in America, which are really interesting because some of my best friends were like super country white guys, you know, who reminded me of my uncles because on my dad's side, they're rednecks in North Carolina. Really great guys.
Those rednecks in North Carolina.
Those rednecks in
really
North Carolina
good
are
guys.
really great guys. No, but for real, because then some of my best friends, they were the most racist dudes I've ever met, but amazing in war and combat and having your back and they would give their life for you. But they just told me their opinions on what they thought about Hispanics, what they thought about black folks. It was just like they had an opinion on it.
You go,
and I'm like,
I don't,
dude, what are you talking about? I'm coming here from Mexico. Like,
right.
I didn't know.
Excuse me.
And my first team leader was a blood. He was black.
He's like, this is
straight up a blood. He was from Compton, and his name was Compton. Everybody called him Compton. No one, for me, it was Lance Corporal Williams. If I called him Compton, I'd get the shit kicked out of me. But Lance Corporal Williams, man, he was on the catwalk every night with a bottle of Hennessy, decked out in red, just like blaring rap music every night. And it was my first. I didn't know that was a thing.
Right.
Like that was a stereotype that people had of them. But for me, it was like my first team leader. And we became like best of friends. He was just an incredible guy. We just didn't understand each other culturally at first, just because I was coming from Mexico. I wasn't coming from either side in the States. I was like just a Mexican missionary kid.
Yeah.
And
you were like, this is way, way far away from where I've ever seen.
Yeah, dude. It was just so different. And but what was so cool is that he was my brother. You know, he was a black blood from Compton. My brother, who was green though, you know,
right.
And then because everybody is green in the Marine Corps, and then I had my other friends who were white. They were my brothers, and then my friends who were Hispanic, they were Mexican or Puerto Rican or Honduran, whatever, and we were also then Asians, you know. So I mean, just everybody there is green.
Yeah,
and that was really interesting for me to see, like but everybody's very different culturally. Yeah, super different.
It's funny. Not to make. I'm not saying the Marines are close to like MMA gym, but it's the same thing. Like in the gym, you find different walks of life, whether it's ages, careers, what they're there for, what they're looking for, but they're all there to do the same thing. The same. You know, I'm here for jiu-jitsu class today, and it's like, great. This guy is, you know, he runs a business up in Kansas City. He runs Panchos Blanket.
Yeah.
This guy is a head of an engineering department at the top of his game doing this. He's a genius on the computer. You know, like there's just a myriad of different things. Oh, this person just is young and wanted to do a martial art. Like, but we're all there to do the same thing, and you get that culmination of different individuals.
I think jiu-jitsu gyms or MMA gyms are full of winners. Tough dudes. If I were in a jiu-jitsu gym or MMA gym before going into the Marine Corps, I think I would have been 10 times more prepared and tougher.
Wow.
Because I got stomped when I went in the Marine Corps. And then, I mean, just mentally.
Mentally?
Just mentally, you're just not tough.
I thought you were going to say the training.
Everybody thinks you're tough. They're tough when you go in. You're mentally, it's because it's culture shock, right? It's culture shock. But when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was a black belt in Marine Corps martial arts. I go into HD MMA, which was an old school place with Jason High, Elsie Davis.
Yep, I've heard of the place.
Yeah, man. So that's where I started. I get in there, and dude, they just wrecked me for like 6 months straight. 6 months is what you can expect to just get stomped. Time and time again, if you're starting out as a white belt in MMA or jiu-jitsu, 6 months, and then somebody brand new will come in, and then you'll be able to throw that one new guy around.
Turn.
Yeah, and that'll last for a bit. But 10 years later, I'm still training, and that was interesting to see how much tougher they are at jiu-jitsu gyms than anyone I met in the Marine Corps.
Yes.
But I was only infantry. I mean, there's levels to it. You could go into snipers and recon and all that. But the guys who get to those levels, if they did any type of mixed martial arts before that, man, you're just so tough mentally because you felt like you were going to die 100 times already doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, you were like, oh, I was so close to, my arm was extended, but you've already been through that uncomfortable period of, like we talked about earlier. But like jiu-jitsu and training obviously sounds like it's a building block for you. But when it comes to, I can't believe it took us this long to get into it, but I'm having such a good conversation. I'm just letting it go. But I wanted to talk about entrepreneurship and business so badly because this is one itself. So starting out new with something that I've never done before and having, of course, all the failures and the mess ups. But now I'm starting to, like, me and James are looking at clientele and doing our own research and building. And, I've read a myriad of books and different things, but that's helpful. But I think putting it to practical use and just trying things has been more beneficial. But I typed in some books that I really like that helped me, whether it was develop a mentality or look at things differently. And when it comes to like entrepreneurship and business, but have you heard of a book called Shut Up and Listen by Tillman Fertitta?
Rings a bell, but I can't say.
It's a very short book, and it's very blunt. Obviously, the title says "Shut Up and Listen." And when you read it, he's like, it's just information that you think is really simple. Like the chapter's like, do this and be better or something, and then he just not rails you, but like tells you why you can't think that way with this simple thing because of habits like this, and this. Really short, really quick. Help me go like analyze myself and realize that I am doing things wrong and not in a way that I had realized before. So that's a good one. Obviously, since we're into rental property, I have the Rental Property Investing and Managing Rental Properties by Bigger Pockets. So when we get into that avenue, I have those to go into. And then, of course, we talked Jordan Peterson, so his 12 Rules for Life, and then the Beyond Order, another 12. Do you have any mentors that helped you with this? Do you have any resources that you use that help culminate your company?
I kind of do it by the edge of my seat. Like I shoot from the hip. Nobody's helped me in terms of business wise, like mentor me or anything. I mean, my parents are a huge help. My dad, he's an awesome mentor. Very business savvy and business minded, even though he's a pastor. But I mean, being a pastor is like being a CEO of a company of volunteers.
Right.
So it's like very high level leadership. So I've just learned a lot from just growing up with them. I'm brand new in real estate, to be honest.
Those are really good. Bigger Pockets is a really good culmination of resources.
Yeah, I have a really good friend who he's been on there for like 4 times. His name is Nathan Brooks. He's one of our guys. He goes to Glory MMA.
That's why that sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
He's been on there. He's releasing a book in January.
I saw that on your thing.
Yeah.
Is it a signing or is it like a release?
It's a release, signing, and he's going to have some guest speakers. It's an event.
Sweet.
It's a launch.
Do you have to buy tickets or does it just show up there? I would love to go. I was just trying to figure out how to get there.
Yeah, man. Just show up.
Do I have to buy a ticket? Do I have to do this? Do I do that? I'll show up.
I'm not sure if you have to buy a ticket, but it doesn't matter. Just show up and we'll get you sorted out.
And then part of doing the, like you said, edge of your seat, fire from the hip, to me that's, like I said, just practical. We'll want a willingness to try, but then obviously just, if it's wrong, it's wrong. I'll correct it. If not, now we know.
Right.
And putting it into practical use. But like some people that I watch, which was helpful, was like obviously Gary V. I don't know if it's Howe, but Lewis Howes, the dude who does he has a podcast called The School of Greatness.
Okay.
And like 3 million subscribers on YouTube. And his story is very similar to kind of how we all get there, which is like kind of at a period where you think you have this plan sorted out, something really, really like messed up happens to said plan, and then now you have to readjust just like you did with your degree, and now we're here. And so he was a good example because he was one who has a podcast that has 3 million subscribers on YouTube. When he started it, he hated talking. He hated public speaking. He was so scared. His anxiety was so high that he couldn't do it. And now he runs one of the biggest ones in the country and the world that everyone listens to all the time. And he was just like, it comes down to the same things we talked about: consistency, learning to try new things and step out. He goes, I took night classes at a community college for years while this thing was starting to publicly learn to speak, like to talk in front of an individual without questioning myself or thinking about what I just said or doing this and doing that and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then obviously with the individual coming on, just like I kind of did here, you got to have the hard work put into it by knowing at least what you're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe at this point Joe Rogan's a little bit of an exception, but I mean, I think he's taken so much alpha brain that it's just a encyclopedia in there, you know.
Yeah.
But
I need to get some of that stuff.
I've been curious. I saw it at like Target, and I'm like, I don't know. I have a feeling that's not what Joe Rogan gets.
Yeah.
I don't think it's at Target.
It's a knockoff.
But there's a lot of things that are happening in this area that I would have never seen prior to trying something new. And I'm glad that, like, mentally you have kind of, I think we all have kind of a similar makeup where it's kind of like no one cares. You know, like, another clothing thing. You're like, no, but we do it this very unique way, very special, very different. They're like, so? They're like, I go to Target, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, who cares if you're talking on a thing? Like, big deal. It's in Kansas City. Joe Rogan's in Austin, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a reason not to do something unless you say no.
Yeah.
There's always something that's going to be there to deter you.
Yeah.
But
I feel like what you're saying, consistency is the key to almost anything, right?
Right.
Oh man, where was I going with that? Consistency. Dang, bro, I forgot. It just left me.
You're good. No, that's something else that, like, and consistency is key. Is like the cliche. Oh, everyone hears these same turnover phrases over and over, but it's absolutely true with whatever you do.
Yeah.
And like, when it came to, like, I'm ready to do this, I didn't have James here yet, so I didn't have another set of hands. I was like, it's just me, it's just here. I gotta pay for this, I gotta do that, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. And I remember my parents and people around, when anything that happens, right, they're always the first ones to say, stop doing that, no, don't do it. But then the minute you get something that comes out of it, oh, wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, but if I stopped when you told me don't do that, that's dumb, and you were on me, right?
Yeah.
If I stopped, you wouldn't be seeing what I'm showing you.
Exactly. I remember what it was, but it was, obviously consistency is key, but consistent growth, and you got to put 100% of yourself into anything that you're going to be really good at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's that saying where to be good, be consistent, but to be the best, be obsessed.
Mm.
You can't be the best unless you're obsessed.
Right.
And so it's like compound interest, which is today it's 1, tomorrow it's 2, then it's 4, and then it's 8, and then it's 16, and then it keeps on. Like, every time it doubles itself, it's crazy, right? So if you put in 100% of yourself in each project you do every single time, you'll see great results. But if you try to put in 50% or 30%, and that's why so many people do fail, I think, in a lot of things, because they're not committed to putting 100% in. And I mean, I know that from just doing so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
I know the things that work are the things that I'm totally committed to. The things that don't work is because I'm kind of feeling if it's cool or not. Like, I've been doing jiu-jitsu 10 years and I'm only a purple belt.
Right.
You know, by now it's either brown or black, but because I have not been like 100% committed to that, well, my growth is going to be slow, and by no means will I be the best. I'll just be good. I'm pretty good, but I'm not the best because I'm not obsessed.
Right.
And so stuff like this, you got to double down, you know, with your dream, with what you really want to do. You have to. And then you have to double down again and again and again. It's not like you're not going to get lucky.
At this point, I kind of like it because it's also it's a good unhealthy behavior, and you have to. I say that lightly because, like I said, if I stopped when people were like, "No," same for you, then you wouldn't have the stuff that you do have. And then again, when you double down, now you have something better. Then you have something better. Now it's really coming together, right? And you're like, it's like jujitsu, it's like chess, it's like any of that stuff. Yeah, I've already thought of that three steps back, right? I knew it would be 2 years before I was here with the signatures lining the wall, and then the studios down there, production teams in here.
Yeah.
We have the, it's just like it's all up here.
I know.
And I know that that's something that people really, really are challenged with, which is the ability to like look other people in the eyes and go, no, I'm gonna do it regardless. I hope that comes off in this podcast in a way that's not us like, I have this and I have the studio and you have the Panchos blanket, blah, blah, blah. What the whole idea of this is that there's something we've latched onto, and then anything that comes into this, like, into the area of the thing we want really, really badly, whether it's financial freedom, something of your own, not wanting to work for someone, all of these things, there's always going to be that little thing that tries to take it away. So I feel like it's our job to, nope, you're not going to influence me no matter what. And then when you get to that point, when you can do that consistently, boom, there you go. You get whatever you put that effort into.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm on that journey. I haven't made it by any means. I don't have anything that's awesome or nothing. Like, I have a cool idea.
Yeah.
And I'm working it, but I mean, I've seen these principles in my life in general where if you want to really do something, you have to be like, even selling houses. I've already seen people come and go into real estate like super quick because they're like, oh, I got my license. But dude, if you don't put in 100% of yourself into learning what it really is to get these contracts through and going through appraisal and going through inspections, you're not going to know what you're doing. There's so many things to learn about everything in life, every avenue, that you're just not going to make it if you don't actually do the work, because you're not going to get lucky. You're just not going to be everything just comes so natural to me. I'm just so naturally good at it. No, you're not. You have to pay the price, bro.
Right.
Pay the price. Put your sweat on the mat. You're going to get injured too. And along the journey, and just because you get injured doesn't mean you give up. And that's the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu. It's in 5 minutes of rolling with someone, you just learned a lot about yourself. You learn how much pain can you take, how much stamina do you have. Stamina has a lot to do with your skill.
A ton.
You know, how much do you really know compared to someone who's been doing it who knows how many amount of years. And you just put in all the suffering from the last 5 years, you put it in those 5 minutes. And you're like, that's what this last year was like, or 5 years, whatever. And so it's like a time capsule.
It's something that I've found that most people who are in entrepreneurship, or they're in things that require that path of difficulty that most I'm not going to say don't want to take, but choose not to take. Because I think that everyone has something, whether it's like, oh, I really want to do this, and then it just dies right there. It's like this, they flood to jiu-jitsu because, like you said, you're going to be railed for 6 months.
At least
6 months before any progress can be made, right? But then you don't get that, they always got that guillotine. They didn't today.
Yep.
And you're like, oh my gosh,
I passed this guard today.
Yeah, it's like the little shit. And then, like you said, doubles 2, 4, 6. Oh my gosh, look at all this stuff that I have in my belt that I can tap into. That leads into this and this and this and this. And I think it's an important resource, but I think that's why so many people of the same mindset are in that gym.
Oh yeah.
Because it's that everyone thinks, oh, I know that it's gonna be tough. I know. I bet if it was like, If I walked in, it could read the mind. I'm like, oh, look at that piece. I have that same piece. You have that piece. Like, there's always that a little bit.
I think the reason why people in jiu-jitsu would just get along so well, one of the things, they're a type of person that is willing to pay the price to get what they want.
Yes.
And that differentiates you from so many humans, because a lot of people don't want to pay a price at all. They're looking for a sale.
Lottery
in other
ticket.
words, they're looking for a lottery ticket. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, everybody sucks in the world except people who do this or that or think this way.
Right.
No, but you're going to reap what you sow. That's the law of life. I didn't make it, but the type of people who will go to jiu-jitsu, they will pay a very hefty price. For what? For what? For injuries? No, just so that they can say that they can whoop your ass. That's the only reason. And they can.
Yeah.
Like Joe Rogan, he says, like, the difference between me and you, the guy who was like asking, like, what's the difference in karate and jiu-jitsu, or not karate, some other thing. And he was like, well, the difference is I could kill you. And I mean, 100%, if you've never done it, then you wouldn't understand. All the Andrew Tate fans out there being like, oh, Andrew Tate says it's a joke. Whatever. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
It's fine. Just believe that, okay? But just don't mess with me. I promise not to hurt you.
Now, just come to the gym one day. Just one day.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
Willing to pay the price. Yeah. I mean, I can't end on a better note than that. I really think that's the culmination of just the process. You're going through it. I'm going through it. Like I said, anything that you have going on, I am part of. I'm there. Even if I'm not there, I'm there in spirit. Like you're a multifaceted individual who has all of these things going. Maybe they're in progress, right? Maybe they're not close, but you know that down the line they will be. And then the encouraging message to the people watching is that they can also achieve that too, but they have to be able to pay that price, whatever that may be, for whatever they want.
That's right. There will be a price to pay. And it's a beautiful thing. Because
it's so nice to be able to talk like that.
Yeah.
It's
a beautiful thing. No, suffering is good. I mean, and it's about your context. And I mean, so if you're feeling the kind of pain that you feel in the gym and your heart is racing at 130, beats per minute or whatever, and you're in a hospital, then the doctor's going to tell you you're having a heart attack and you're going to die. Like, this is really pain. This is real suffering. But if you can change the context, and you're literally in the jiu-jitsu gym and your heart rate's going at 180, even worse, and you feel like you feel extremely fatigued, what's the difference? Oh, now you're enjoying it because you're like, wow, I'm here in the gym and I'm getting better. So there's like the context changes whether you're growing or whether you're dying. That's the difference.
Right.
And you're going to suffer though either way.
Right.
You're going to feel that. It's going to happen.
Well, and there's also a period where, yes, you're like, I didn't write it. It's in the Bible. You reap what you sow. But at the same time, I think when you begin to make the decision to pay the price for whatever you want and whatever you want to pull out of this life, then you're also in charge of the biggest thing that everyone dreads when they're old, which is that regret, that big old regret pile. No matter what, we're all going to have some kind of regret. But you do have the opportunity to minimize how much that is. So, like, if I choose to do this hard thing and try it, and then at least I know if anything happens, if it leads me somewhere else, or if it does this, it does that, blah, 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 then at least I know I didn't not take that chance. I'm not going to have that in my backpack of regret when I'm old, sitting there like, oh, no, I didn't do that, I think that's also a really important part of, it's not necessarily, pay, like, in a negative context, pay the price, do this, do that. We're preaching to you, but it's like you will have regret, and it's up to you to deal with how big or how small that's going to be at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're going to suffer. And I feel like that's the thing that a lot of people try to avoid, and you can't, man. You can't avoid it. You're going to either suffer and it's going to produce life, or you're going to suffer and it's going to kill you. Yeah. But it's going to be one of those, like, we just can't get around it. And it's not like one of those Jocko Willink, like, freaking things that I'm saying. I mean, it is just a very, you're always going to be hungry too, just because you ate once and were satisfied once upon a time doesn't mean that that's it. That's the end of your life. No, you're going to get hungry again. That's just the cycle of life. So good. You're always going to find a new goal. You're going to find a new meal, because that's our life, man. Our life is to get hungry and to find a way to eat, and to eat, be satisfied, and then do it again.
Well, you've led me to a question in regards to, two Christians talking. So we're here, for his glory, right? We're here to do his work and do things and help individuals and do good things in this world. Now, it's a odd question because I remember reading the Bible and I remember hearing about like, oh, when you're in heaven, you'll have jobs. And I'm like, oh, well, hold on. I thought you're supposed to have peace up there, worship, all that kind of thing. And they're like, yeah, but you'll have like a spiritual job. And I was like, oh, so this literally is part of not just like an individual, but also like in our soul. Like we'll still have jobs and goals and things to do after we're not here, wherever that may be for whoever individual, but at least for us. And I was like, oh, so we always grow? And I'm like, yeah, it's either grow or die. I mean,
yeah.
I just think you have the option to do whatever it is that you want to do. You just have to.
Well, I mean, philosophically, it's really tough to go into the weeds with that.
Yeah, I was just like, it's always an interesting concept to me because I remember asking, because that was the response I had with the pastor. I was like, so we're going to have jobs that we take from this life, all the stuff we did, into after this? And he was like, they didn't teach me that at Bible school. Like, it was like, I was like, well, for me, that would be okay. Because that also means that I still grow even in the best place I would ever be.
Yeah. I don't think that heaven is the end of anything. I mean, I think this life is the introduction, if even that, I don't know. But assuming it started with this life, it's the introduction to consciousness. And then all of these principles and these concepts and philosophies that we're learning here, when we get to the next phase of life, you're going to have bigger questions because an answer is an introduction to a bigger question. And so what kind of questions were we going to have then? We don't even know. We don't, it's just, and I do believe though, the principles of economy, the principles of reaping and sowing, the principles of just how the world works, why wouldn't those be taken on when we have better and greater understanding?
Right.
And when we have that kind of understanding, which is all hypothetical, I don't know, I've never been there, but nobody has. So no one can say, oh, it ain't like that. What an idiot. You're a freaking idiot if you have an opinion. Like everyone's an idiot then. Nobody knows anything near what the reality is because you haven't been there.
Right.
All we have is faith. I've never been to Russia either, though. But I know it's there. Why? Because I know enough people who have been there, and I've seen pictures of it, and I've had a corroboration of evidence. And corroboration equals truth. That's how our minds work.
Right.
So when it comes to heaven, I've never been there, but I haven't seen pictures either, though. That's the only thing I'm missing.
I was like, you got pictures? I was like, I'd like to see these pictures.
But there's enough people who will say it's different things, and so at the end of the day, we all have to have faith in something because you will never be able to corroborate everything. You can't be everywhere at once. No. You can't experience everything at once. You can't go back 2,000 years and know if Jesus rose again from the dead. You can't go back 3,000 years to visit whoever, Mecca. You can't do any of that. So you have to have faith. And
then you go, oh, I have faith in that. But you're like, oh, there's also evidence here that it says Jesus was a real individual.
Oh, yeah. That's excellent. That's historical stuff that's like, of course.
Right,
people,
right.
If you don't know that, then you just haven't read a book on history or anything.
Yeah, read a book.
Read a book, please. Start with 12 Rules for Life.
Oh, so good.
That's a good one.
But, Jonathan, do you have anything else? Anything you want to plug? Your company, your business? Anything you got in the works?
If you want to buy a house in Kansas City, I'm your guy.
Excellent.
No, so what we're going to be doing is really cool garments that are going to be unique. I think that's going to be super cool about Panchos Blanket is we do have our staple items, which are a lot of these cool sacos and stuff, but we're going to be releasing items that will be limited time, and it's going to be made to order. So you'll see a jacket or something. We'll be like, hey, if you want this, you have this month to order it, and we're only going to do these this one time, and that's it. And so whoever 50 people order it, you'll be the only person and for the only people with that jacket made to your size.
That is so nice to have.
So it'll stay unique. Like it'll stay super unique where it's not like, oh, is that a whatever from Calvin Klein? Well, that's cool, but there's 10,000 other people with the same coat.
Right.
Instead, it would be like you, and if you find somebody with the same coat at some bar, you'll be happy you found them because it's like, oh, I found a Pokemon.
You're like, are you kidding me? You're wearing that thing?
Yeah.
You were like, yeah, I got it a couple years ago. They did that limited 50 amount.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like that signed Funko Pop on my shelf.
Yeah, there you go.
Not a lot of people got that Ralph Macchio Karate Kid autograph. Well, I am going to be one of those custom orders because it's been an hour and 40 minutes, and I love this shirt.
Nice.
So, Jonathan, thank you for being here, man. I appreciated this.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. You have a good time?
Appreciate it. Yeah, man. It's great.
It's great.
I hope to be on again.
Oh, hell yeah. I think we're going to be doing some cool things with, I think I've figured out how to rig all of this through there so we can do kind of a fight, UFC fight companion.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Have, get more furniture, more chairs, have everyone just in here, food, drinks, the whole 9 yards. We'll hook up with the cameras to the computer. People can watch it live and we can have a good fucking time.
Heck yeah, dude. Let me know when that happens. That'll be awesome.
Hell yeah. We got
great.
another one.
Heck yeah, I'll be here for it.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan.
All right, man. Yeah.
We'll see you guys next time.